All right. Hello, photographers. How's it going? It is Thursday. I thought we were going to be late tonight because it booted up the computer and was immediately greeted by a Windows update screen. I was like, come on, how did that sneak in there on me? It was probably my fault last week when I shut down the computer and wasn't paying attention. But we are here. Mike. Oh my God, where did that come from?
Some guy named Mike, that's right.
Mark is here.
Oh, here I am.
Hello, Sandy is here, and Jason is here, and Living Like Larry B is here. Welcome, everybody. Taking my phone out of my pocket so I'm not sitting on it. I'm excited for tonight's topic. This is jumping off of what we did last week, of course, and I'm going to give you guys a quick sneak peek because we are going to be doing some live demonstrating editing on the iPad. So you can see here on the screen, oh, Mark's not here though. I got to put you in this one. I missed one. Sorry about that, Mark. Let me fix this up.
Okay. As long as everyone can still hear me.
Yeah, but I want your face in there too. Hello, Dave. How's it going?
Hey, Dave.
So I thought we were ready, but I wasn't. So let me get this fixed up here, and then we'll be good to go for sure. 25, and boom, Mark's in, and we'll switch that over. And now that's what it'll look like. You'll actually be able to see Mark too.
Hot damn.
So Living Like Larry B says, I edited all of my photos shot on my Sony a6000 with Lightroom Mobile. That is awesome. So
Cool.
Tell us, what are you editing on? Are you editing on a phone? Are you editing on a tablet, like sort of quote-unquote normal-sized iPad? Are you editing on the massive iPad Pro, like this one right here? This is my friend's iPad Pro, not mine. My friend, I'm going to turn off the rotation on this thing so it doesn't keep flipping around. My friend Andrew let me borrow this for the week, which is awesome. And I've been playing with it. And Mark asked before we started the show if an iPad Pro is in my future. If we asked the Magic 8 Ball, the answer would probably be, seems likely. But I don't know when. Like, I'm not going to run out and buy an iPad Pro tomorrow or anything like that.
Larry says iPhone 7.
Okay, iPhone 7, excellent. That's cool. Mike is here and Eric is here. How are you guys doing? Dave is here from the UK. Hello, hello. So we want to answer all of your questions about Lightroom CC on a mobile device, if you have any, and any questions you might have about the synchronization. Now, we did the synchronization last week, and I also put out a video on Tuesday that logically and not chaotically, since I was figuring it out last week, logically laid out the whole process of synchronizing with Lightroom CC Classic and Lightroom CC across mobile and desktop devices. If you haven't watched that video, by the way, you guys should check that out.
I'm just grabbing the link now.
Oh, excellent. Mark's grabbing the link, so we'll share that into the chat so you guys can watch that video if you haven't already. Jason says, I've tried some editing on my iPhone 7 Plus, not convinced yet, fine for really basic stuff. Now, I would agree with you, Jason, on the iPhone or just a phone in general. I have now, since I've started using this, I have been editing in Lightroom CC on my phone, both culling and doing Lightroom raw processing adjustments. But I agree that I wouldn't try to do like a retouching like I did with the photo that I shared last week. In fact, let me see if I can show you guys that photo. I posted it on Facebook, and I know some of you saw it.
Oh, not the picture of me?
What's that?
Not the picture of me?
Not the picture of you, Mark. I just got to do some scrolling through my timeline here real quick to find it. Here it is right here. So this photo here is the photo that I fully edited and retouched on this iPad Pro using both Lightroom CC and Affinity Photo for iPad. And I thought, you know what, it would be fun to show you guys that process and the synchronization back and forth, including with going into Affinity Photo and generating a file that I can send back to Lightroom and have a fully edited image on the computer. So that's kind of what we have in store tonight. But also, you know, if you have questions about photography in general, we always take those questions. And we always like to start with what you guys have been up to this week in photography. So let us know in the chat. What have you been up to? What have you guys been doing? We've got a couple questions already, so we'll take those. And then, Mark, you can let everybody know what you've been doing, and I'll share what I've been doing.
Okay.
Oh, Andre's here. Hello, Andre. How's it going? He says, I find Lightroom CC on my phone is a huge bandwidth hog. Killed my data quickly one time, so I didn't try it again after. Maybe it got better since. I would say no, probably not, because it's synchronizing and it's sending the full image files up to the cloud. So that is a huge limitation. And when on the show last week, that's what Mark and I talked about a little bit when we talked about whether or not Mark would use it. Like you were saying, Mark, that your data is very limited, both on your home plan and on your phone plan, right?
Yeah. With my phone plan, the speed is there, but it's basically I'm limited to 3 gig a month.
Right.
Whereas my home plan, it's basically I wouldn't worry about the amount of data that I'm using, but for me it's the speed, because uploading I'm only like, or for downloading I get about 5K, but uploading is only like 600.
Ouch.
So it's quite slow. So even just to upload one raw file takes forever.
Right. So that's something like where you'd have to, you wouldn't, I mean, like if you did it, you could in theory gain the ability using your home, but the problem is, like, if you wanted to be able to do it and then use the stuff on your mobile in any sort of a relatively quick time frame, that would be impractical because you'd be waiting so long for that to upload.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem, right? And I'm fortunate, and you know there are a lot of people who are fortunate to be able to live in areas that do have, you know, decent options, cable and/or fiber internet with no metering or caps on them. But that's not everybody, and so I recognize that this won't be for everybody. But
yeah, I think in the U.S. you guys have the option of unlimited data plans on your phone, whereas that option doesn't seem to exist up here in Canada.
Okay.
Because they basically they want you to pay some more, and then once you paid some more, then pay some more again. So
yeah. Well, we do. It's interesting because like unlimited data used to be the norm and just about the standard. Like when you bought a phone data plan, pretty much the only option was just it was unlimited. Like that was it. Like truly unlimited, because Jason just put in the chat unlimited in quotes.
Quotes, yeah.
And then I think AT&T started the trend of eliminating the unlimited data plans, the genuinely, truly unlimited, no cap data plans.
Right.
And then I believe it was either Sprint, I can't remember if it was Sprint or Verizon that brought them back, but it is unlimited. Most of them cap at 20 gigs, and then they throttle your data. Yeah, but still, 20 gigabytes is a lot of mobile data. So you could do quite a bit with that.
Yeah, like if I had unlimited data on my phone, then I could easily upload the files using the mobile device, and then just for the editing, use just the regular home internet, because it wouldn't be so bad because I wouldn't have to download them again. Plus, downloading would be a little bit faster anyways. But that's for me. That's really the biggest drawback is all my limitations.
Yeah. I understand that, and you know, and for that reason, like I even mentioned this in the video that I made. Like, you know, you have to pay attention to your data if you're on any kind of a meter or cap connection, and that's the unfortunate reality of the world. So let's jump into the comments here real quick. Jason said Snapseed on the phone also works okay, but not for major editing. I kind of agree with that. Snapseed, I feel like it came out of the gate as something that was really good, and then after Google bought it, it sort of just languished. And I know Google bought it so they could bring a good photo editing app to Android, because at the time there wasn't anything available. But in my opinion, like I went away from using Snapseed quite a long while ago. Basically, once Lightroom became available for the phone, I defaulted to that for doing raw edits on my phone, even before I started doing all the synchronization stuff. But it's not that Snapseed is bad, but I don't think it's that great anymore on the landscape that we have.
Right. So it basically came out of the gate great.
Yes.
But then nothing evolved in it, I guess. That's my understanding.
Yep, I would agree with that. TC said, if I did a lot of editing, hello TC, by the way, thanks for joining.
Hi,
if
TC.
I did a lot of editing on my mobile devices, I would probably use your method, referring to the one that I set up, which is the method Andrew showed me. Also, since I've decided not to have a photo business, I'm pretty sure I won't be editing a lot anyway. Yeah, so that's nice too, because if it's more casual, it's actually easier to be comfortable doing edits on your phones, because I'm not saying that like color accuracy and things like that aren't critical, because they are even when you do edit across like a mobile device or something like that. But rather that because you're not delivering a client image, you are creating the standards for yourself rather than having to meet the standards of a client. And so if you want to relax those standards, you can, or if you're okay with whatever the situation is on a mobile device, that's fine. But yeah, the upside, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just agreeing with you, so. No, I agree, not disagreeing.
Okay. What I was going to say is, I think the upside is that generally speaking, iPads have really well-balanced screens in terms of color accuracy. iDevices, Apple devices in general, you can't calibrate, your iPhone or your iPad, but they're quite consistent at the very least, and I think their color accuracy is pretty darn good. I can't say the same for the different Android devices on the landscape out there, so your mileage may vary if you use Android, but that being said, it's still worth trying. Jason was wondering how much Affinity on iOS is. It's $20, which I think for a mobile app, a lot of people will say, wow, that's a lot. And it's not that it's, not a lot compared to a lot of mobile devices, which, might come in generally between the $1 and $5 range. But it is well worth the $20 in my opinion. I am quite impressed with it. And here's the funny thing, right? Like, I've talked a number of times about how I have Affinity Photo, but I don't use it much because I already have a workflow with Lightroom and Photoshop when I sit down at the computer. And there's a fair amount of opportunity cost in switching over to new software and having to learn how that software works to get your workflow back up to speed. But on the iPad, I jumped right into it and wanted to learn how it works. And those skills are going to translate over to Affinity Photo on the desktop, which means I'm going to be more willing and more able to jump into and explore that software and see how it compares to Photoshop. So I'm actually kind of excited about that, because in basically my quote-unquote spare time, rather than like actual sit down, I'm editing and I need to edit and produce time, having Andrew's iPad and being able to play with it allowed me to play with Affinity in a way that I haven't when I sit down at the computer to actually edit. So what else is going on? Let's see what else everybody's been doing. Jason says he's currently packing for a vacation, and I saw he shared some photos with me on Facebook through Messenger of pictures that he took, which was pretty cool. And TC is in a group on Facebook that's been posting a photo a day for, it's a 365, and he's been doing that since the first of the year. Question about that, TC. Is this like, do they give you a theme for every day, or is there just like a picture every day? I'd be curious to know how that works in your group. And if you'd like, if it's an open group, shoot me the link on Facebook and I'll share it in the chat here for anybody else who wants to join that.
Weekly theme, he says.
Weekly theme, okay, cool. And Andre said, you'd think Lightroom CC on your phone would only be showing you a smaller preview of the images instead of a larger resolution one? Well, this is the thing that, good or bad, depending upon how you look at it, with Lightroom CC, and synchronizing the way I outlined in the video on Tuesday, is that you get your full RAWs synchronized across the system. And for a lot of people, that's a feature, not a bug, so to speak, because if you're only working with smart previews on, say, your iPad, then it's not practical to take that image into something like Affinity Photo and do a full retouch or a full Photoshop edit, because you're working on, you know, a low resolution version of that image generated by the smart preview. That being said, flipping that around, you can mitigate that bandwidth by reversing how you synchronize. It would be more work though, because if you synchronize through Lightroom CC Classic, then what you get synchronized across your devices will be the smart previews, which will save you on bandwidth. But again, that's going to limit you to just doing raw edits, because anything that you do in something like Affinity Photo is just going to be on a very low resolution, smart preview generated image. So I can actually show you how you would do that. We'll jump over to my computer here. Actually, before we do that, let's just catch up on the chat and see what everybody else is doing.
I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm allowed to ask questions too. did you?
You are not allowed to ask questions, Mark. What are you talking about? No.
Did you do the update or the upgrade to get the 1 terabyte of storage?
I did, yes. I did. At $5 a month, I decided that was a no-brainer. At $10 a month, I was like, maybe
not.
Maybe not. But for $5, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like duh.
Right. So did you have to upgrade your package, or was it just an add-on to the package?
I changed my plan. So I went into my Adobe ID. I logged into Adobe. I'll show you guys. So we'll switch this over here and let me open up. Whoops, that's the wrong. We'll go to Adobe.
Evening, George and Leroy.
I'm behind on the chat, so I apologize.
Oh, they just showed up, so you didn't
miss. Let me get logged in. Okay, excellent. Hello to George and Leroy, you said just joined us?
Yep.
So you go here under Manage Account with your Adobe ID, and then you relog in for security purposes. And then you have your plans and products here. And see, I'm on the Creative Cloud Photography plan with 1 terabyte. And if you go under Manage Plan, if you're on the, and then you got Switch Plan here. So if you're on the regular photography plan, which is $10 a month, then when you come into this view here, it'll show you your current plan is Creative Cloud Photography with 20 gigabytes, it's 1054 with tax. And then it will show you, Creative Cloud Photography plan with 1 year. This is prepaying for the whole year. It's the exact same price, so I just did it on monthly. And then just the Lightroom CC, which gives you the terabyte, but only gives you Lightroom CC for software. It doesn't give you CC, CC Classic, Photoshop, plus the terabyte of storage.
Right.
So that's where I found it. Because if you just go to Adobe Photography Plans, right, and you look at their options here, where is it? Choose the plan that's right for you. Here, see, photography plan with 1 terabyte of cloud storage, includes CC, terabyte, classic, and Photoshop, $19.99 a month. So I believe the $5 for a terabyte is for existing plan customers. But if you sign up for the photography plan and then go in and look, it might give you that option. I have no idea. I've been using this plan now for, gosh, 3 years, I think. I've been on the photography plan. And so I went in there and it was just there at $5 a month for me to be able to upgrade.
Nice.
Yeah, okay. So let's see what else we got going on here. TC says, I'm also editing all my photos this week using On1 Photo Raw 2018, and no, I don't have plans to switch to OnRun. I tried Luminar and really liked it. I still need to mess around with Luminar some more too.
Yeah, my dad's using On1. My dad's not exactly computer tech savvy. He can do the basics, but he says with On1, he has the basics down so he can do editing, but he says there's a lot more to on one, say, versus like Lightroom, because you can do layers and stuff like that, but he's not really been able to explore it, and he's on an even more limited bandwidth than I am, so he can't even really go onto YouTube to watch videos to see how to utilize everything. But
okay,
but so far he's not minding it too much.
Okay. Yeah, I've been hearing from a few people good things about On One. I know Luminar has layer capability as well, but I don't know how Luminar compares in capability to On One Photo Raw in depth. Like on the surface level, I know they're similar pieces of software. Jason says, we all know how well Spyros does learning new stuff. We'll not talk about Adobe Premiere tonight. Mike loves Affinity Photo. TC says it's a weekly theme in the group, which you mentioned. George says he almost forgot we were on tonight. Glad you jumped in. And definitely. Mike says, hello, Mike. Thanks for joining. Spyros and Mark, knowing that you both are YouTube superstars, do you watch Tony Northrup, Matt Granger, the Angry Photography, etc.? And what is wrong with this Angry Photographer guy? Okay, so I am aware of all of them, Tony Northrup, Matt Granger, and Angry Photographer, but I generally don't watch their videos. Like, I'm not subscribed to any of them. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I want to make clear that when I say that, I'm not dissing any of them. I don't think I'm better than any of them or anything like that. I don't generally watch their videos because they generally don't interest me. If they're talking about something specific that I'm interested in, then I might watch a video. As far as the Angry Photographer goes, I'm just not going to say anything. You know, the Angry Photographer makes videos of a particular type, and
he obviously has an audience for it.
He has an audience, and I think he likes to poke and provoke a little bit. That's his prerogative. You know, I'm not going to say he should or shouldn't be doing that. That's not my thing. You guys know that I probably would be further along on YouTube if I was more willing to be sort of quote-unquote controversial and take stands and, you know, like react to things that other people say in their videos and, you know, and be like, Olympus is the best in the world and all other cameras are shit and things like that. But you guys know I don't believe that, because it just, you know, it's just not, that's entertainment to me, and that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. But you guys know me, I'm more interested in creating great art in photography and helping other people experience that same joy that I've experienced in photography. And I don't think you get that through controversy and things like that. So, you know, they live and let live is what I say. Yeah. And that's kind of my bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I actually subscribe to Tony and to Matt. Not the Angry Photographer. And with Tony and Matt, either one of them, I don't watch all their videos. I subscribe because I like to see the sort of content that's there, and every once in a while I might watch it. What I find with the Northrops is that they're, for my taste, they're a little bit more in depth. They go into more details about the equipment and that, which doesn't interest me. I'm more of a hands-on. If it works for me, it works for me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't care how many elements or blades or guide numbers and that sort of thing. So, I find they, for the most part, a lot of their stuff, they go into more detail than I care about. And Matt, with him, it's kind of hit and miss. I don't mind his stuff, but again, if it's something that interests me, I'll watch it. If it looks like, yeah, I don't care, or I might not learn anything from that, then I'll skip it. Mm-hmm. But I think probably my favorite one, and sorry, Spyros, it's not actually you, but
what? What?
But I think my favorite YouTuber right now is actually probably Thomas Heaton, just like TC mentioned. I really like his stuff. And another one that I've been watching a lot lately, he's a Canadian, Brendan Vonson, I think is how you pronounce his name.
I'm familiar with Brendan.
Yeah,
but he's a travel photographer.
Yeah, he's a travel photographer, but it's not so much that his work is interesting, but he's just a fun guy, and I like to see his interaction and and he seems like the kind of guy you could just hang out with and have fun with. So
Right.
that's kind of why I like to watch his stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sandy says, Jason, you brought up Premiere, not me. I did. It's on me. It's totally on me. Sandy says, I stopped watching all the quote-unquote popular photographers. Seems like it's mostly trying to sell stuff. I only watch a few now. Yeah, and, you know, far be it from me to criticize people trying to sell stuff, because I have my courses that I'm trying to sell too. But, you know, there's always a line. And everybody has their own comfort level as to where their line is from, you know, because the basic model we're all working under is, you know, you give away stuff for free, the YouTube videos that we produce, and then you ask at some point people to look at the products that you have for sale, you know, and you ask them to purchase them.
Right, basically help support what you do.
Exactly, yeah. And so I'm not criticizing that at all, because I do it as well. But like I was saying, everybody has their line, the line that they draw as to how aggressive they are with the stuff that they sell. And I am admittedly far less aggressive than I probably should be. But I also don't want to be like overly aggressive. So, you know, that it is what it is. Yeah. But Mark.
Gavin Hoey's another guy I like too. I like his stuff he does through Adorama. But I think
another Olympus shooter, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's Olympus. But yeah. I think he is the only Adorama guy that I watch. Him, and once in a while Mark Wallace as well. But none of the other ones I watch.
Right. So Roderick just said something. He says, I just can't stand the half-hour videos with 3 minutes of useful content and 27 minutes of loud public domain music over B-roll. Yeah, that's basically like the current standard. A lot of that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon how you're looking at it, being sort of set by Casey Neistat's style of video, and that's proliferating throughout through YouTube, really. I mean, you know, Peter McKinnon is that style. A lot of these other photographers and videographers and whatnot are like that. And to that, I would say, I agree. Like, there's a line between, you know, usefulness and padding the usefulness of the content in your video. And I find I'm the same way. Like, if you watch somebody for them, a lot of people watch Peter McKinnon because they like Peter McKinnon, and they're not necessarily going to Peter, and I'm just pointing out Peter as a person. I'm not singling him out for any other reason than he's just an example of a person who creates that style of video. If you like Peter McKinnon, you know, there's a level of that is you just like watching his videos because they're entertaining and quote-unquote pretty, so to speak. And Peter does teach in his videos, and he is educational, but I would say, I would think it's fair to say that the level of education versus the level of cinematography, so to speak, is disproportionate. And again, not a criticism. This is not what I expected to be talking about tonight. not that there's a problem discussing this, if this is something you guys are interested in, but I'm trying to balance that out in my new videos and trying to take steps to make my videos prettier, but also still be as valuable educationally. Now, George just said something.
I've definitely noticed your past month or two worth of videos, the production level has gone up a big step.
I hope other people are seeing that in a positive light. I mean, I don't know, you know, how. It depends. Like, I mean, even the video I did on Tuesday, you know, the intro that I made for that video, it was a short intro, but that was, you know, a step in me trying to be more compelling, while still being largely educational. You know what I mean? But I will say this, like George just pointed out, not true. You don't need to be angry or controversial. Just look at guys in Canada that have YouTube channels that are not controversial at all. And I agree with you, George, right? I'm not saying that you have to be controversial to be big on YouTube. I'm just saying that it is
one of the ways.
It is one of the ways, yes. It is definitely one of the ways. And so I I just meant to say that, you know, for whatever reason, I have not grown as quickly as other, you know, photographers or YouTubers in general. And I'm not going to lie, there are times that I have felt frustration with that. But, you know, I enjoy what I do. I love being able to help people. And so, you know, I'm going to keep doing what I do, because even though I might not be Peter McKinnon level, it is still something that has been profitable, and is becoming more profitable as I get better at building out the business side of things. So enough of that.
Obviously it works for you, so.
It works for me, yeah, exactly. Have you ever met an angry Canadian?
Yeah, look at me, I'm angry all the time.
Jason says, we must have struck a nerve. We left the weeds and we're wading through the marshes now. Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but again, you know, I don't want to go all nuts on this, because this isn't really what we came here to talk about. And again, I'm not trying to diss any of these other YouTubers out there. Every one of them have worked hard to achieve the success that they have achieved, and it's well deserved to them. So I want to make that very, very clear. And now let's talk about this mobile editing stuff. Mr. Noodle says, small is the big new. New big. Thank you. And Jason said, and Sandy says, selling a course is one thing, saying everything is crap except Sony this, Sony that. Yeah, I would agree with that. But you guys know how I feel about just talking about gear too. Compelling and witty.
It's fine to talk about gear.
Right.
As long as it's gear in general, generalized gear.
Yeah, and it's even fine to talk about specific gear, you know, to highlight whatever features or do a review or something. But, you know, there's lines to be drawn there. Anyway, let's do this mobile editing stuff. All and any of your questions about mobile editing are more than welcome. Photography stuff in general, of course. George says, so I use Lightroom CC to get pics from my PC to Instagram. Haven't really used it to edit, just crop. And Andre, I agree with that statement 100%. Number of subscribers is not relevant to the quality of the videos. It's very, very true.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can absolutely use Lightroom CC to get pictures from your PC to Instagram. Now, when you do that, George, let me ask, how, when you say that, do you mean you're editing them on your PC, letting them synchronize to your phone, and then using your Lightroom CC on your phone to push them to Instagram? That would be my guess of what the workflow is, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And then Jason said, don't get me started with getting stuff on Insta. Yeah, that's its own pain in the butt. 100% agree with that. And Instagram has been very adamant about shutting down and not letting you share things in any sort of automated fashion. Although just recently they started to say, we're actually going to let you schedule posts through third-party apps like Hootsuite and whatnot. So stuff like that is coming.
Right. Yeah, because I know that was my main reason why it took me so long to get on board with Instagram. Mm-hmm. But I'm sort of on board with it now.
Okay. Okay, so this is interesting. George says, edit is classic CC, then importing the JPEGs into Lightroom CC, then synchronizing only those that I want to post. Okay, there's an easier way to do that, George. Let's show you how to do that. TC says, so to get back to the mobile editing, do you think Lightroom CC can help the hobbyist photographer like me? I would say absolutely yes, but it's going to depend upon your personal workflow. So let's take George's situation here and look at this. I'm going to switch over to the PC view so you guys can see my screen. And I'm going to open up Lightroom Classic CC. And I'm going to open up Lightroom CC while I'm at it, because I might as well just have them both open. So what George is currently doing is editing them in Lightroom Classic, right? So we're in here in Lightroom Classic and doing some sort of an edit here, whatever it might be. Right, so let's say, you know, you've got an image like this and you just do an edit here, and then exporting that as a JPEG, right? So let's just walk through that process here. We'll take this image right here. I'm going to unflag it and we'll do a quick edit on this. So I'm not going to do anything super duper fancy, just very quickly.
So you know it's edited.
Yeah, so you know it's edited. You can see a difference. This is sort of like the typical thing I do. I'm also going to, just so like we can really see, I'm going to change the profile to my orange and teal profile I made when I was messing around with the profiles and making those videos on that. We'll do a detail here. That was way too high. I usually like to sharpen to around 60 and then yank that mask way up to hone in on those details around 80 or 90. Okay, so that's good. That's edited.
That's basically the same as I do.
Now, George's process is to do this here in Lightroom Classic and then make an export. So we'll export a JPEG. Let's just go ahead and do it. Actually, I'm going to take one more quick step. I would recommend this step if you're doing it specifically for Instagram, which is to crop it to 4:5, because that's the format that Instagram uses, the aspect ratio. Do custom profiles sync to mobile, Jason said. That's a good question. I don't think they currently do. They don't. So I'm going to go back, and for now, there's got to be a way to make them sync, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm going to have to go back and look. But instead, we'll change it to one of the vintage ones, because the vintage ones do sync across. So we'll grab this vintage 7, which is similar to the one that I did. Here it is right here. Okay, not exactly the same, but close enough. So now in doing that, you can see right up here that this photo is synchronizing over to the cloud. And actually, you know what? I'm going to switch this over to this view. No, that's obscuring things, so we'll stay with this view. And now that it's synced, I'm going to jump over to Lightroom CC, and here that image is already done in Lightroom CC. But here's the thing. Now, you're only synchronizing the images you want. So what is happening here is George is then taking this and doing an export, and we'll just do it at 1080px, because that's what Instagram, that's the native file size for Instagram, and then doing an import. So we'll go add photos, browse, we'll go to desktop, grab this image, review for import, and I'm just going to throw it into an album that I'm going to create real quick called Insta. Right? So this is what the process looks like. Insta selected, add one photo, and then I'm not on the phone, but I'm going to switch over here to Lightroom, to QuickTime, and we will open up Lightroom CC here, and if we go out, that Insta album should show up, and that image will synchronize here. There it is right there. So we've got this image now that I edited in Lightroom CC Classic, exported a JPEG, and imported that into Lightroom CC as a JPEG. But you have, there's a better way to do this, George. Here's how I'd actually recommend you do it. First of all, if you don't want to use the process I detailed in the video on Tuesday, which posits that if you want to use the synchronization, you should edit, or you should import everything through Lightroom CC. Because you're saying you're syncing only the images that you want to post, which I totally respect. What you should then do instead is do your Lightroom Classic thing just like you normally do, okay? And then once you're done editing an image, come down here to your albums. That's history. I gotta go back to the grid. Come down here to your albums and create a new album. So we'll call this, or collection, whatever we're calling these. We'll call these Insta images, okay? And right here, do you see this sync with Lightroom CC option? All you need to do is make sure you're signed in to syncing in Lightroom CC Classic. And then, so let's back up. You need to go under Lightroom Preferences, and under Lightroom Sync, make sure you are signed in here. Additionally, I forgot this, make sure you have the Sync with Lightroom CC option when you click and expand under your name turned on here. So with that set, you can come down here, you can create that new collection called Insta Images and have it sync with Lightroom CC, and then all you have to do is drag your image that you've edited So this one was included automatically because I had it selected into this Insta Images folder. And you can see this little sync icon right down here showing that it's going to sync to Lightroom CC. And that will automatically just show up in Lightroom CC in the album that you created. So let's find it here. 2017, 2018, Insta Images. Here's that image. Go ahead, Mark.
So the way you've done it versus the way George has been doing it, is you're syncing still the raw file versus George was just importing a JPEG.
I'm syncing, when you synchronize from Lightroom Classic CC, what ends up going up to the cloud and down to Lightroom CC on your mobile is a smart preview. So it is a small raw file. Not as small as that JPEG's going to be, admittedly. So if you are doing this to conserve bandwidth, then continue to do what you do. But if you are just doing it because you want to control what's in Lightroom CC and what syncs to your phone, you can do that much easier and skip the step of exporting and then importing into Lightroom CC by just creating these albums, or this one album that instantly synchronizes. And then when you edit again, so let's just say I'm here and I have this image that is edited and I want this one for Instagram, all I got to do is drag it. Where did that album go? Here it is. Oh, I got to switch over so you guys can see. Drag it over to Insta Images and it will show up in this same album. Right, George, what I'm saying is you don't have to sync your whole catalog. If you initialize the synchronization in Lightroom Classic CC, then the only thing that will sync will be albums or collections that you create, and check mark that sync option with them, okay?
So you can have just certain collections that sync, basically.
Yeah, then you'll only have collections that you create and control synchronize across that cloud, and you can manage that space and manage what you synchronize versus having the whole thing synchronize. If you wanted it all synchronized, then I would recommend going through Lightroom CC. If you want to manage it, both in terms of the data for smart previews and in very specifically controlling what you sync, then do it this way through Lightroom CC, create an album that syncs, and manually drag in to that album the images you want to sync, because whatever you drag into that album will then synchronize across and into your albums on Lightroom CC, and only those will sync. So yeah, you could just create...
Basically, if you log your regular Lightroom Classic into the CC, things aren't just going to start syncing then.
No.
It's just going to be what you tell it to sync.
That's correct. Nothing will sync automatically if you initiate in Lightroom CC Classic. The only things that will sync will be those albums that you create and tick mark to make sure that they do synchronize with Lightroom CC.
Right. Well, maybe I'll play with that, because that
seems
it doesn't sound unreasonable. And if there's smart previews versus the full raws, then the file size might be a little bit more manageable for my slower internet. Just might try just to play with it, just to see.
Yeah, I think that would be a way to try it out, where you can save data, manage exactly what you synchronize.
Right.
Mike says he's got to get out and take some photos, so have a good night. Thank you for joining us, Mike. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so there's that. Now, there was another question that we had, which was TC talking about, do you think this would be useful for a hobby photographer? And I think the answer to that is in my opinion, yes. And here's why. One of the reasons, and this is going to depend upon you as a photographer and as a person, right? But one of the things that has me genuinely excited is being able to, just like at the beginning of that video on Tuesday, again, I said, like, imagine being able to edit your photos, you know, when you're sitting on the couch with the family, or maybe you're lying in bed about to fall asleep and you can't sleep, so you grab your phone and instead of flicking through Facebook, you can edit some images. or you're on a long road trip and you're not the driver in the car, and you want to get some, you want to edit some photos that you just shot because you're super excited about them or whatever. Right? Those are all excellent use cases for this. But the other thing about it is the fact that I am like genuinely excited about being able to do these things on these other devices. Because it's going to speed up my workflow. And whether you're a hobbyist or not, we all want to get our images edited and out to the world faster and not slower. And the fact that I can call an entire photo shoot on my phone when I'm not at the computer, but I'm not necessarily, if I'm just like, flicking through Facebook and wasting time, well, I can be flicking through images and not wasting time, right? So, like, there's that. But then, again, like, just the excitement of wanting to be able to do this on these devices makes me want to edit even more. And that impetus is a good thing for all of us as photographers if it excites you to be able to do this, because it's A, going to free you up to edit wherever you want, and B, if you're excited, you're going to be more likely to do it, and C, you'll get your images out faster because you're editing untethered, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's why I think it would be useful to anybody, and we'll do a further demonstration here in a minute. I specifically want to show you like this whole idea of round-tripping your images from Lightroom into Affinity Photo and back to Lightroom on the iPad. But Andre said, my workflow for moving photos from Lightroom Classic to Instagram works well for me. I have an export preset that saves Instagram optimized images to Google Drive, which can be accessed with my phone for posting on Instagram. I do a version of that. I use Dropbox, but otherwise, up until this point, my process has been that exact process. But going forward in the future, that might change, and I might just because everything's going to be synchronized through Lightroom CC, I won't have to do that because they'll already be on my device. But that is, in my opinion, probably the best system right now. And that's not a great system, but it at least is fairly seamless because you already have an export. It goes automatically into this folder that's on Google Drive, and it will just automatically be there when you want to access it on your device.
Have you actually tried doing any like serious culling yet using a tablet or phone? Or yeah,
I've called like 5 or 6 shoots already on the phone and on my this is my iPad here. It's an iPad Air 2. So I've called on here and I've called on the phone, both, like fully culled photo shoots,
right,
down to like, these are the edits I'm going to make.
Right.
And it's worked great. The only thing I wish we had was what's called the survey view. And if you're not familiar with what survey view is, let me switch it over so you guys can see. In Lightroom Classic, if you are looking at a group of images, so let me just jump in here to my hard drive and into this shoot with Aaron and Kylie that I did, right? So let's say you have a series of images, and let's just grab like these 4 right here. I'm going to select all 4 of these images, right? And I want to compare them side by side, and I don't want all this clutter and all this junk. And the other thing, too, is like they don't have to be in sequence. Let's actually say it's this one, and this one, this one, and this one right here I want to compare together. On your Lightroom Classic, you can hit this icon down here in the lower left corner on the toolbar, or you can hit N on your keyboard to go into survey view. And then you just see, what's that?
N for survey.
Yeah, N for survey, go figure, right? You just see that group of images together, and that's it. And then inside of here, you can actually apply a flag, you can apply a color label, you can apply a star rating across it if you wanted to. You can remove an image from the set. If you say, okay, like this one right here, let's say I wanted to remove this one because these 3 are similar-ish and this one is totally different. This doesn't really belong to be compared with this set. I would kick that out, and now I've got like these 3, and now I might want to say, okay, which one of these 3 is the best one that I want to edit, and I can just focus on them. That's the only thing that's missing from culling on here. And the reason is that sometimes there are images that are not in sequence I want to compare. if they were always in sequence on the mobile device, that would be one thing, but they're not. Regardless, I'm managing and making it work as is and still being able to do a full call. And if I'm at a point where like, okay, I've called this as far as I can here, then all I've got to do is come to the computer and say, okay, I need to grab these 4 images and do a survey on them and narrow it down, which will still be far quicker than having to call the whole shoot. Let's see. Does anyone use, TC is wondering, does anyone use the share to Instagram feature you can create in Lightroom Classic? That's a workaround. It says shart, but I think you meant share.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a workaround that is one of those things that Instagram could cut off. It's not a quote-unquote legal way to post. I don't use it. I know there are some photographers that do, but I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I have it on mine. I've used it a couple of times, but I just end up just basically exporting to, like you said, the Dropbox, and then I just bring it in on my phone from Dropbox, and then just upload it from my phone.
Yeah, same system that like Andre and myself were using. So George says, I'm a hobby photographer and don't fully utilize Lightroom CC or Classic CC, and that's fine. As long as you're getting the results you want, that's great. But yeah, exactly. You know, the fact that you could save yourself some steps by changing your workflow up a little bit, like I just showed, you know, that's always something useful for anybody, regardless of whether or not you're a pro. Saving yourself time and making your workflow more efficient is good for everybody. All right, TC says, great advice. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. George says, thank you for helping me understand this. And Mike wants to know if we can talk about Lightroom and overall photo storage in simple terms. Mike, can you clarify what you mean by photo storage, first of all? Because that depends upon what you mean. Like, are you talking about photo storage on your computer? Are you talking about the photo storage in the cloud? Clarify that for us, please.
How we do it ourselves.
What's that?
Or maybe he's just wondering how you do it versus how I do it for storage.
Yeah. Please clarify what you mean by photo storage, Mike, and we can definitely talk about that and give you as best an answer as we can. TC says, on your phone, doesn't the screen size hinder you a little bit? Yes, like calling on here is not as pleasant as calling on this iPad that I have here, which is, I think, a 9.7-inch screen, right? And calling here is not as awesome as calling on this 12.9-inch iPad that Andrew loaned me, right? So the bigger the screen, the better, but I can still very clearly view one image at a time on here, and these you know, phablets, as we like to call these monster phones we have these days, this is big enough, in my opinion, for me at least, to be able to view the image and evaluate it and decide, yes, this is worth editing, no, this is one I want to reject. You know, on a smaller phone, like say an iPhone 4 sized phone, or even the iPhone like SE, I might be a little more reserved about it because those are fairly small screens, you know, relative to what we have nowadays. But most of us are using phones of a larger size than what the standard used to be for a very long time. And in my opinion, even like an iPhone 6 or 7, you know, like the not plus size would be big enough, and I would be comfortable culling and reviewing and making edits on that.
Yeah, my phone is a 6 Plus, so it's a little bit bigger. But
yeah. Okay.
And worst case, you can at least pick out the ones that you like versus don't like, and then when you get your computer, the ones you like, then you can double check your focus is right on, and then basically just finish your culling there anyways.
Exactly. Yep. Mike says, well, where does one store? Through CC or just as files in Windows, on a hard drive, or in a cloud? Okay, so I understand what you're talking about. Mark, do you want to take a crack at it, or you want me to talk about it?
Well, I think basically either one of us can, because your method's obviously different than mine, especially since you recently switched over to playing around with the Creative Cloud version. But myself, because of my internet limitations, all my data literally goes onto these external hard drives. I don't keep anything on my internal hard drive, and I actually end up, the data I have on here gets backed up onto here, so I have at least 2 copies. So that's kind of how I work. I don't back anything up to the cloud because my internet is so slow. If I had faster internet, I might consider it. But that being said, what I do now, which I've recently started doing, is I'm not storing my raw files online, but I'm using the Amazon Prime photo storage. So any JPEGs that I'm exporting for clients or for whatever purpose, or even if I just want to show my friends some pictures, I'll upload them to there. And because it's unlimited storage space of JPEGs, but I'd never put my raw files there just because it'd be way too, it just takes up way too much bandwidth for what I have here at home. So that's sort of how I'm doing it right now.
Right. And the bandwidth is your limitation again, which is something we've already talked about.
Yeah. But yeah, all the raw files are all here in my little office here, if you want, or my studio, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So I've got bandwidth, I've got internet, so I have a different system. So here's how everything of mine is stored. First, I, like Mark, don't actually store any of my images on my computer's actual hard drive. Rather, plugged in via Thunderbolt on my iMac is a 6 terabyte hard drive. And on that hard drive, I store all of my raw files, all of my images, my Lightroom catalog stuff, and actually all my video stuff. All of my active video projects go on that hard drive as well. And after that, they are nightly backed up to a second hard drive that is literally plugged in right behind the computer. All of the photos go to that second hard drive. I have a secondary separate hard drive for video as well.
Is yours automated, the backup?
Yeah, the backup is automated. It happens on a schedule every night at like 3 a.m. with Carbon Copy Cloner is the software I use on Mac. I'm not sure. I don't think it's available on Windows. So like that's the principal storage. Now I do have a third backup tier, which is Backblaze, which I started using when I got this new iMac. I had been using a different cloud storage solution, but I didn't care for their client, their backup client. You know, their software was not good. And so I switched over to Backblaze, and Backblaze was not only cheaper, but their software is much, much better. And so my third layer of backup is everything goes up to Backblaze. And now, inadvertently, I actually have a fourth level of backup because I'm now going to be using this Lightroom CC to import everything, and everything will be synchronized to Adobe's cloud. Now, one of the key questions is like, where are you storing your images, right? So right now I'm storing them on a hard drive on this computer, on a backup hard drive next to this computer, and then in Adobe's cloud and in Backblaze's cloud, right? So I've got 4 levels of backup right there. But here's the thing, right? Like, let's say you were trying to manage storage and you didn't have a lot of hard drive space. Under Lightroom CC, if you were using Adobe Lightroom CC as your principal import place, one of the things you can do is choose whether or not you want to store a copy of all originals at your specified location. Or if you want to store a copy of all smart previews locally on your hard drive here, right? So if you do this, if you check this, everything you import into this instance of Lightroom CC on this particular computer will be stored on your destination drive, wherever that happens to be.
Whether it's an external or not.
Right. But any images that I say did in a different computer on Lightroom CC would only be in Adobe's cloud and on that computer if I had this checked on that computer. Right, so like that, Adobe's basically offering you an option of sort of having their cloud be the centralized storage location for all of your images, but still having some images on hard drives if you want them there. And that, in my opinion, is actually a bad idea if you don't have a robust backup system like Mark was talking about, or like I've got with my layers here. But what Mike was saying too is that he's got the D850 and he's got crazy large RAW files, and that's the downside to, you know, 36, 40, 50, 100 megapixel cameras as we keep, you know, as these manufacturers keep pushing these cameras megapixel counts up. And what I would say to that is you're going to have to either A, be way more aggressive in your culling and make sure you delete your culled images. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. I haven't done this like I normally do, but here in Lightroom Classic CC, you can see, like in these photo shoots, that I have my culled rejected images and my non-culled, non-rejected images side by side. Typically what I do is once a year, I'll go into a, I'll go back to that year and I will delete all images that I rejected from every photo shoot, which will save me space, right? So I don't know how far behind I am in this. Let's just see what happens here. I'm on 2016. Yeah, so here from 2016, I have 400 rejected images that I didn't delete from the year, which isn't bad. So I did some cleanup in 2016, but I didn't finish it. But if you look at 2017, which I have not cleaned up, when I hit Command Delete, whatever, leave photos on service. Here I've got over 2,000 rejected images still in 2017 that I'm not going to edit. The rejects, I don't want them, right? So because I haven't finished editing my 2017 blah, 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 because we bought a new house, yada, 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 I haven't done that cleanup yet. But this is a way to save that space. You don't have to keep every single image you shoot. If you want to, you can, but then you're going to have to manage that. Like, that's just the reality of it. You're going to have to buy more hard drives. You're going to have to store those images somewhere. And hard drives take up less space, generally speaking, than, you know, thousands upon thousands of printed photos and negatives, but it's still, you still have to manage this. And that's something that, you know, everybody's got to figure out their own best system that works best for them.
Yeah. Night, TC.
Good night, TC. Thanks for hanging out. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Something that might also help utilize storage space, and actually something that I picked up from Tony Northrup was actually one of the videos that I actually did watch. And basically what he was showing is taking, like, the camera raw files, like in my case it'd be PEF, in your case it's, I'm not sure what Olympus is, ORF, and having Lightroom convert them to DNG. All the data is still there, but what he found out from experimenting is that basically he was saving almost 50% of his storage space, because it was the DNGs were basically getting compressed that much.
That's a really good point. Andrew, when Andrew and I were chatting about this, sorry, I'm not going to mean to talk over you.
Too. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, and it was lossless as well, too.
So you're not losing image quality, even though you are saving image data space, hard drive space. Yeah. And Andrew, what I was about to say was Andrew told me the same thing. He converts to DNG to realize those same space savings. So Mike, if you don't use DNG, I would recommend taking a look at converting your images over, your raw files over to DNG, and that will, again, help you store and manage that space better. And to back up a little bit, you had that question, which was, but does Lightroom CC create a new copy somewhere? Can you store the CC images on a hard drive? Yes, it does. So again, let me go back to the screen so you guys can see. And here in Lightroom CC, my images are being stored in the, I don't know how to say it, Lacey, I don't know how that company's name is pronounced, but that's the brand of hard drive that I store my images on, in the pictures folder. And when they synchronize over to Lightroom CC Classic, they also get stored into this catalog in a separate folder. So yes, if you use this system that I detailed on Tuesday, on your whichever hard drive or drives you designate, if you import into Lightroom CC and have them automatically synchronize into Lightroom CC Classic, you will have a copy of that image on in 2 different spots that you may or may not have designated.
2 or 3?
2.
Because
one for Lightroom CC, one for Lightroom CC Classic, 3 if you count the one in Adobe's cloud.
Yeah, that's where I got 3 from.
Yeah, so that is 3. George says Lacey is pronounced Lacey, like that. So let's hope that's correct. Jason's also got a jet. Thanks for hanging out with us, Jason.
Yep. Night, Jason.
Okay, so yes, and that again, may be problematic. But the way I look at that is a benefit, because that is essentially an inbuilt backup system. Take 2 hard drives, plug them into your computer, specify the first as the one for Lightroom CC images, specify the second as the one for Lightroom Classic images, and boom, your synchronization process is also an automated backup system. That shouldn't be your only backup. I want to stress that very, very highly. But that is an inbuilt backup that will give you some data redundancy. And let's face it, data redundancy is very, very important, because we all know how easy it is to lose images, right? It's not a question of if a hard drive is going to fail. It's a question of when.
Yeah.
And if you go with the U.S. military rule, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have 1 copy, when you lose it, it's gone. If you have 2, one of those copies is going to get lost at some point, which means you really only have 1, etc., etc. So 4 is 3, yada, yada, yada. You guys get the idea. Andrew, hey, we've been talking about data management and stuff. We haven't actually even gotten to the iPad demo yet, but we should get there. We should actually get there now.
Wait, can I ask a quick question before you get there?
Of course you can.
Okay, so we're basically talking here, in theory, how you have it set up, you're getting 3 backups.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're online through the Adobe Cloud gets full, how do you eliminate them off the cloud but still keep them local so you can start adding more stuff to the cloud?
You would have to remove them from the synchronization ecosystem. And so what that would entail, I think, would be... That's a really good question, actually. Andrew, do you have any insight on that?
He says just choose to remove from catalog.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
Or remove them from the album. But if you do that, it'll still keep them on your local drive, I assume?
Yes, it should. If, however, you choose to like actually delete the file through the cloud ecosystem, it'll delete it across the devices, unless you do what I do, I think, and move them into like your own storage hierarchy and ecosystem. But I still need to dig into that more, so don't take that as gospel. Okay, so let's get into this actual demo and take a look at this. So I'm going to switch back over to here and switch over to the iPad view. And we're here. Let me move this so that little icon goes away. And let's just look at Affinity Photo and Lightroom for iPad. So all of this stuff here is synchronized into Lightroom from the cloud synchronization system. And I've got my 2017, I've got my 2018. So let's just jump into 2017. And we're going to jump into one of these that I've definitely culled. So let's go with Trisha. And you can see my culling process has been done here. I've got images that are shaded dark. Those are the ones that I've rejected. And the ones that are not shaded dark, those are essentially my selects. They're not flagged or marked in any way, but by virtue of not being rejected, that means they're my picks. Now I can filter all of this. Up in the upper right corner, I'm going to mouse on the computer screen so you can see. It covers it up with the chrome of the window, but there's that little, what looks like a funnel in the upper right. It's the icon next to the magnifying glass. If I touch that, I can filter the view here, and I'm going to go to unflagged, which is going to hide all of the rejected images. And now we've just got these images here of Trish that are my selects from this photo shoot. So we'll go into this very first one here. I just tapped it. And on the right-hand side of the app are your adjustment options. And when you tap the little slider icon, it looks like a hamburger menu with some dots on it. You can expand your different panels, and you can make your edits in here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to round trip this. Here, we're going to start in Lightroom. We're going to edit this in Lightroom. And look at this. I got to reject this image. I didn't realize that Teddy down here in the lower left corner was making some adjustments to the set when I shot this image. So this is the kind of thing that you have to pay attention to when when you're doing your editing and your work here. But Mr. Noodle wonders if I'm using an editing pen. I'm actually using the Apple Pencil. And again, I want to say thank you to Andrew, who loaned me his iPad Pro and Apple Pencil to test all of this out with. I did purchase a stylus with a point, right? Because I had this stylus, but it's this chunky kind of, just rubbery, really cheap stylus that I'm going to try to use my iPad Air 2. So the one I got has a point that is more similar in terms of fineness to the pencil, and I'm going to try using that on here.
More precise.
Yeah, what was that?
More precise. More
precise and significantly cheaper than an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil. like more than an order of magnitude cheaper. So I'm going to actually reject this. So I'm going to switch over to rating this by tapping the star down in the lower right corner, and then I'm just going to swipe down to reject that image. And it just automatically moves to the next image. So that one will move back to editing. And I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is check my brightness level on my iPad. You see my brightness level is up to full. I don't want it there. And I don't want it there for the exact same reason that I don't want it there when I'm editing on my computer. This is a light-emitting device, and that skews your impression of how bright the image actually is and will appear, especially when you print your image. And so I like to have my brightness set to half or less when I'm editing, regardless of the editing device I'm on. So with that set, I can now go back into Affinity, whoops, not Affinity, Lightroom, and do my edits on here. So we're just going to go ahead. I'm using the pencil. I could use my fingers on the slider, but I'm using this just to kind of get more used to using it. So we're going to go ahead and make an exposure adjustment of about a half a stop, and then we'll pull those highlights back. And what I like to do too is here I'll zoom in, and I might actually pull that exposure adjustment back a little bit. Her face is a little bit brighter than I'd prefer, so maybe just a quarter stop there roughly. That looks better. And then I don't really need to do much else here other than I want to pop some contrast into this image. 10 looks good. We'll pop down to color. And again, you guys, if you're not familiar, I do my basic edits here in Lightroom, so I don't do a ton here, and then I move into the retouching in Photoshop, or in this case, Affinity Photo. So color, I'm just going to do a little saturation bump, like +5 is probably good. I want to see what +10 looks like. Yeah, I'm going to go with +10 there. This is meant to be a very bright, colorful image. I want those colors to pop, so we'll leave it like that. And then lastly, we've got clarity. We'd like to add a little bit of clarity, not much. I usually keep it under 10. We'll go with 5 there. And then my sharpening, just like I did earlier with that quick edit, we're going to crank this up to around 60. And then one of the things that would be nice to have would be a view of the mask. But I already know between 80 and 90 is a good place to mask if you really want to localize in on the fine details. So that is all done, right? And this is all I'm going to do with this image here in Lightroom CC. Now, very quickly, we're going to let that image synchronize. It looks like it's already done. So I'm going to jump on and take a look in Lightroom CC on the iPad, and we should see that image edited here already. So we got to find 2017 Trish. Let's filter this and just get unflagged. And this is the image that I just edited, and my edits have not synchronized through just yet. So we'll give this a moment and let them come through. It'll take a moment or two for them to show up. Oh, I think I need to actually move off the image to initiate the sync. That's one of the things that I keep forgetting. So I just swiped on the iPad to move to the next image, and now those should pop through in a moment. So while we're waiting, let's see. Mike was wondering if, Mark, have you been to Banff, B-A-N-F-F, as a photo op?
I wish.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
It's basically out the west here in Canada. It's where all the mountains, and it's beautiful, beautiful out there. It's that's something I'd definitely like to do. Go out there, shoot the mountains, shoot some of the lakes, and
cool.
all the scenic stuff out there.
Okay, Andrew says he's going next year. That's awesome. Okay, so if you guys weren't paying attention, the edits have synchronized here into Lightroom CC on my desktop. They'll also be in Lightroom CC Classic, right? So now we're going to jump back to QuickTime. We're on the iPad here, and we're going to move this into Affinity for that actual retouch process. And this is what's exciting to me. This is what has me most excited. I love the idea of being able to just do this on a tablet wherever I am, because retouching in Photoshop really, in my opinion, requires the use of some sort of pointing tablet, pen, Wacom stylus device. I've done it on my MacBook just using the trackpad, but it's god-awful and not pleasant. And sure, I could take like my trackpad with me, but then I need a place to set my MacBook. I need to be able to plug this in, and I need to be able to set it somewhere and then do my editing. And like a hotel desk, you know, may work, but if you're, you know, if you're like in your car or wherever you might be, this just isn't going to be very practical. So this is what's exciting to me. So I'm going to come up to the top here and hit that share icon, and I can open in, save the camera roll, save the files, share, etc., etc. I am going to choose open in. Try to anyway. There we go. And it's asking me what size. Well, I'm going to go maximum available size. And it's downloading and rendering the image. And then it's going to give me the option to open it in a different app on the iPad here. And I'm going to copy it over. Go ahead.
Andrew's just wondering if you played it with AstroPad yet.
I have not. I know Andrew has been using it because he mirrors Photoshop to the iPad to edit, and I haven't played with it yet. It's something that I was going to look into, but I don't know how much it costs, and I don't know how practical it would be on this versus like an iPad Pro. Plus, I did want to genuinely just explore Affinity Photo and the idea of really literally doing it all here. So we're going to copy this over to Affinity Photo, and cannot import. Please close the current. Okay, so I had this open from before. My apologies. We're going to close that. I don't want it. And we'll go back and we'll redo that process. So export, open in, maximum available, and now I should be able to get it open into Affinity. So Affinity here. And boom, here we go. So now I can start my retouching process. Okay, Nick has a question. Mobile devices, are they not the best on battery life, and running a processing heavy program would zap the battery life quickly? I mean, I don't know what to say to that because I haven't done this sort of amount of editing enough yet to know. I do know that I was heavily playing with the iPad Pro that Andrew loaned me. I keep saying that because I want to make it clear that this isn't mine. But in the time that I used it, like there was one day where I was using it for, you know, I feel like I was using it for a good 4 or 5 hours, pretty straight on, screen on time, me messing around, and I think on this iPad Pro, it only used 40% of the battery. which I think they rate iPads generally for 11 hours of battery life. So that's pretty darn good, I think, in doing something heavy like that. And it's different. Like culling takes nothing, and the Lightroom edits really doesn't take nothing in terms of that sort of processing. This is definitely going to take more processing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into it. The very first thing I'm going to do is what I normally do in retouching, which is I'm going to add a new pixel layer. And then, oh, wait a minute. No, see, this is one of the things that I forgot about. We're going to copy this layer. No. See, I still am working through this.
You're still in Photoshop mode.
What's that?
So you're still in Photoshop mode.
Yeah, I'm still in Photoshop mode. On Affinity, what I'm going to do first is I want to duplicate this layer. So I got to remember how to duplicate it. Oh, I remember how to duplicate it. And see, again, you guys get to learn with me. So to duplicate it, I come over here to the Layers menu, and I have this duplicate option right here. So I'm going to duplicate. And the reason I'm going to duplicate is because I want to preserve the background layer once I run the frequency separation filter.
No, Mike's leaving us. Night, Mike.
Good night, Mike. Thanks for hanging out. So here's the frequency separation filter. And you can see here, it pops up. It shows you your low frequency layer and your high frequency layer. And then you have your radius option to set how much your blur is going to be. And for this image, 2 pixels is probably good, because you can see the details are really starting to go out. I'm going to go up a little bit higher, maybe just like 3 pixels looks good right there. And then down here, on these options, you have this check mark. That little check mark will implement the filter, or if I wanted to exit it, I would hit that little X. So I'm going to apply with the check mark, and it's going to do the work. And now when I go to look at the layers, you'll see I have the original background layer. And this is one of the things I found to be curious, because when I did that other image, I didn't initially make a copy of the background layer. I just ran the frequency separation filter, and it essentially removes your background layer and just replaces it with these 2 frequency, the low and the high frequency layers, which is why I took that initial step of duplicating. And once you do that, now I'm on the high frequency. I want to zoom in and just see, well, I'm not going to do like a full retouch, but I'm going to come into here and grab the blemish removal tool, which is like the regular healing brush, the spot healing brush tool in Photoshop, I believe it is. And this is one that's just going to sample local pixels. Sorry, Mark.
Like content aware or not?
Yes, like content aware.
Okay.
Let's see. Nick says, by the way, I know you two may not be the biggest sports fans, but as a football/soccer, so not American football, from England, congratulations on hoping the 2026 World Cup. Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that America was going to be hosting. That's pretty cool. All right, so we've got the blemish removal tool. I'm going to change my size to make it relatively small. And I'm going to come down here and just hit this little blemish right there. And you can see it takes a moment. Hit that blemish right there and let it do its work. There's one right here. And I'm just kind of, making a little circle with the pen on the spot. And to move around the image, I just take 2 fingers on the screen. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this. I'm going to change my camera angle here so you guys can see what I'm doing on the iPad a little bit better too. There. Let me move this. Oh, I should move it back here more. So to move the image, I just use 2 fingers and I can move around. And like here, now this will be curious because there's this hair that's running across her eye. So let's try to remove that with Affinity here and see how good a job I can do with it. I'm going to go back to the clone brush. We're going to make this smaller. Opacity 100, flow 100. Hardness, we want that hardness up some, but not all the way. So we'll go with 73. And now, in order to create your sample, you tap and hold until it shows you that target, and then you paint where you want to paint. So you see that right there. That worked pretty well, but it is A, too big, and B, too hard. So I'm going to make that brush softer, and I think I'm going to make it even smaller, and I'm going to zoom in even more. So that sample target point is still there. I'm going to create a new one a little bit closer and just create new targets and clone out this hair. So it's not quite as efficient. Whoops, see, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a new target there, not paint there. So now my target's there. As in Photoshop, where you can, one finger the Alt key, and then, with your other hand, use your pointing device, whatever it is, in order to take it out. So this is a little bit slower, but one of the things that Andrew and I were talking about when we were talking about doing this and this being slower is the fact that it's not necessarily about it being faster. Part of it is just about the enjoyment factor that I mentioned earlier, and the other part is just about the fact that I can do it
while sitting on the couch or laying in bed or whatever, or driving down the road. Well, Kim's driving down the road and you're sitting there.
Yeah. By the way, that rarely happens, so I won't be doing much editing in the car. But this is the possibility that's opened up to you. The fact that I can do this when I'm not at my computer is powerful, even if it is not as efficient as doing it at my computer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because otherwise you might not even be at your computer.
Exactly.
Whereas if you're sitting on the couch and the tablet happens to be sitting beside you, you might think, oh, let me work on editing a photo or do some calling or something like that.
Exactly. So I'm going to do a little bit more of this, and then and I'm still using the clone brush, but I'm going to back that off, and I'm actually going to switch to the healing brush that I sample with. So this is like the clone, this is like the sampling healing brush in Photoshop.
What format does it save them in?
You can save it as a PSD, as a Photoshop file, or you can save it in the native Affinity, which is like AF photo, .AF photo, I think.
Right. So if you save it as a Photoshop file, will it retain all the layers if you open it in Photoshop?
It does, which is really nice.
So then you can go in and tweak things afterwards if you want to when you're actually at your computer.
Exactly. In fact, I can show that. Let me just hit a couple of extra spots here. Okay, so I would want to do more, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to fully remove that hair. I'm just going to look around a little bit more and see. There's a spot here I want to get yet. That looks better. And that's probably all I really need to do here. One more, right, a little bit on her arm. Come on. Okay, so that's like the cleanup with frequency separation. Andrew says, I would still prefer Photoshop, but editing on the iPad allows me to edit and relax on a couch or in bed or when I'm out of town. It's just a really fun way of keeping up to date on edits. And then he says he's going to grab a pizza. Nice to see you too, Andrew.
Yeah.
So after frequency separation, what I tend to do is a skin softening. Now, this was interesting because I had to refigure out how to do this. I knew the basic principles behind it, but I created an action to do this when I learned how to use this skin softening method. And then I forgot how it works because I just use the action all the time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first actually group together the frequency separation layers. And you see how I take the pencil and I just swipe left over a layer. And when I do that, you see that gray line, that gray bar fills it in. That means both of those layers are now selected, and if I hit the folder icon above them, that groups them together. Now it's currently unnamed, so I'm going to tap the 3 dots in the circle there, and if I tap group, I can then name the layer. So I'm going to name it FS for frequency separation.
Night, Andre.
Good night, Andre. Thanks for joining. And now I've got this frequency separation group with those 2 layers in there. So now I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to create a merge visible layer, which is merging all of the layers together into a brand new layer. But it put it in the wrong place. I didn't want it there. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to select the group, and I'm actually going to Yeah, there we go. Merge visible. There we go. So now I have this new layer, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a filter, and I'm going to go under high pass. And for the high pass filter, we're going to be fairly aggressive. We're going to go 15 pixels. Now, high pass is often used as a sharpening tool. Boom. So that is now applied, and if we look at the layer stack, that is my high-passed image, right? And that obviously is terrible. We don't want that. So now I'm going to desaturate the image. I'm going to go under Filter. I'm going to go Hue Saturation. This is Adjustment, sorry.
Does this have layer
opacity and stuff?
I was thinking like layer styles, like Photoshop, like a light,
like embossing or things like that.
Yeah,
and,
no. Hold on a second. I can't the term I'm looking for. I'm just opening up Photoshop so I can remember what the hell it's called.
Now, one of the curious things here is that this hue saturation layer is an adjustment layer, and so I'm going to merge that down onto my pixel layer.
Blending modes.
What? Yes, it does have blending modes.
Okay.
So I'm going to go merge and just merge down, and now this layer I need to invert, and I need to remember how to invert. And I think invert is either a filter or an adjustment. Let's take a look. Fill, frequency separation, high pass. It's got to be an adjustment. There it is, invert. Okay, so I have now inverted this. And now, finally, we're going to go to the layer, and we're going to change the blending mode. And I believe it's overlay or soft light. God, I don't remember.
Soft light sounds right for a high pass, but
yeah,
I'm not an expert though.
See, I got to document this better so that next time I actually know. Well, no, that's not right because the color is still gone. Oh, I know what happened here. Okay, let's back up. We're going to undo that. The invert also needs to be
black.
What? Oh, what the heck? Sorry about that, guys. I forgot to prevent it from sleeping. Nick says overlay. So what I forgot to do was the invert is also an adjustment layer, so I need to merge that down as well. So I'm going to go back into merge again. I'm going to do a merge down. And now I should be able to change the blending mode here. Yes, this is what we're looking for. So there's overlay. You could also do it with soft light. I wouldn't recommend doing it with hard light. So we'll do it with soft light here. And now, if we zoom in, you can see that her skin, but everything else is also softened, right? So now we're going to apply a layer mask. And the layer mask icon is the one next to the three circles, the three dots in a circle. It's this. This is almost identical to the layer mask icon in Photoshop. So I'm going to click that, tap that, and I want a new empty layer mask, which is going to fill it with black and cover everything up. So that is all the steps you need to do to prepare. Now you can see on this layer, I have this layer mask right here that I selected. It is now outlined in that blue, and I can choose my brush tool. I can set my flow to around 20%, which is what I like to use. I can set my hardness to 0. I can set my pixel width to something decent. Oh, and here's something interesting. The faster you swipe when you're changing something, the quicker it changes. So like I can very quickly go to very large, or I can very slowly go to something more incremental. And then I'm going to just brush by painting on the layer. And I need to change the color to white. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Now, if you look at the layer mask, is anything happening? Color is white. It should be brushing on the mask, right? Let's see if it's making a change. I think I see the change.
Doesn't come through very well for me.
No,
so
it's
I
not.
can't
It's
tell.
probably not going to come through very well on the screen. But normally, we should be able to see it showing up in the mask. Interesting. Let me change the flow a little bit more and see if that makes a difference. You know what? I think it's brushing on the layer itself for some reason. So let's set visibility back. Paintbrush tool. I'm just backing up my history. Set current selection. And this is one of the things that I'm still getting accustomed to with this software. Yeah, for some reason, I'm not able to get it. Why can't I get it to paint on the mask right now?
Because you're live, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. Because this worked just fine when I did it the other day. Pixel unnamed layer mask. Let's just undo the layer masking and try it again. So this is, I want to add the mask. I want to new empty mask. Black. And I certainly have the mask itself selected. But you see, I can see it showing up like right there, that little itty bitty spot. I don't know if that translates at all. It's right above the mouse. But that little itty bitty spot is on the layer itself, not on the mask.
You actually have the mask highlighted versus the image.
Yeah.
I know that used to always mess me up when I first started learning Photoshop. I'd always had the wrong thing selected.
Okay, that's definitely wrong. So it must be working. It's just so subtle that I can't even see the difference. So let's go ahead and just give this a quick whirl here. On the other image, I can very clearly see the mask being painted on. In fact, let me show you that. I'm going to go back out here. We'll open this one up. Actually, I'm going to open this one up because I was messing around with making selections and things like that. And I just threw in like those bokeh balls for a background. And so here's an example right here. Like you can see these layers with these masks that I very clearly was working on the masks and not the layer itself. And here's that softened skin one. And you can see, you know, I painted on her arms, her torso, etc., etc., etc. So I'm not sure why it's not showing up in the same fashion on this other image that I'm working on right now. It's curious. Okay, so now look at that. Now, like, that mask is covered in... That's decidedly odd.
A bug in the software or something.
Maybe, yeah. So this layer is set to soft light. Let's try this one more time. Whoops. Add the layer mask. See, now that's a white layer mask. I don't want that. Brush tool. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and proceed and see what happens here. Regardless, you know, you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to do Whether or not it's working the way I expect it to.
That's another story
Yeah,
itself.
that's another story. And what we'll do here is actually look at the layers in Photoshop when I finish this, so that we can see what those layers look like once I round trip it back into Lightroom. All right, so that's all I really need to do with the skin. Again, I wish I understood what was going on here with this, but whatever.
Mr. Noodle's asking if this is a newer studio shoot you've done recently. You've just been busy, so he hasn't really noticed.
Well, this was from July of last year, so if that's new.
A year, that's almost new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost exactly a year ago. So, for me, that's new.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So after I do that, I do dodging and burning, and I do dodging and burning the same way as I do here. I have a layer, I fill it, so I'm going to use the bucket tool here, and I'm going to choose my color. Where's my color picker? I got to remember this. Mode fill, tolerance 20 contiguous. Oh, I know, I just need to, here we go, this color thing right here. And I want, let's just go to, yeah, I just want luminance at 50. Here we go, 50. Saturation and hue both at 0. And then I'm going to tap to fill that layer. So that's a gray layer right there. I'm going to set that blending mode to soft light. And this is what I'm going to use for dodging and burning on the skin. And now I'm actually going to use the dodge and burn tools, which if I recall are right here. Black, the fire is for burning, the sponge brush is for dodging. So again, hardness, low opacity, or I mean, not opacity. We want a very low flow. We'll go with like 6%. And that brush size seems pretty decent. So right now we are burning. That darkens. So we're just going to run over some of these areas here and darken them in. And I'm doing this very quickly and roughly just to kind of give you guys an idea, but with those brushings right there, you should be able to see the difference from the burning here that I've done. Okay, now I can see on the mask where I painted. So that did seem to work properly, even though it wasn't looking like that. Oh, and I can see the effect when I turn it on and off. So it definitely, the softening worked. So again, I'm doing this quickly to show the round trip process. I didn't want to do that there. We will catch these shadows on her arms, darken them up a little bit, and that's good for dodging and burning on the skin, or dodging. So we're going to switch over, for burning, we'll switch over to the dodge brush now, and we'll hit those light areas to lighten them up a little bit. And again, you can see the difference as I toggle this on and off. The dodging isn't quite so prevalent as the burning, but it's certainly there. And then I do the same thing for hair. And what's Q2? I don't want to spend too much more time because it'll probably take a bit to go through to show the process. So I'll skip the hair. And the last thing that I do is I do the eyes. And so I do a curves adjustment, which I believe is right here. And I globally just brighten the whole thing a little bit. And then go to your layers, and I'm going to throw a mask on there, new empty mask layer, and that takes it back to where it was. Brush tool again, and that lightens everything up. So what I'm going to do is zoom in here, make my brush nice and small, and paint the whites of the eyes with white to brighten them up a hair. I'm not on the mask, am I? Nope. So let's fix that again. Now we're on the mask. Okay. So we're going to paint to brighten up the whites of hair. And I'm very specifically just brightening the existing color. I've said this before. I don't believe it's a good idea to actually whiten the whites of the eyes, because then the people look like they're aliens, which is not great. And I do the exact same thing. Another adjustment.
Nothing wrong with aliens.
Darken this time. And also add a mask. This time select the mask. And with the brush tool, whoops, that's the pencil tool. Yep, this is decent enough size. Make the irises darker and also the edge of the pupil darker. And we'll come over here and do the same thing on the other eye. Okay, and that's not it. I do a little bit more. I also do a sharpen, so let's see if we can make that happen. So I'm actually going to uncheck those, and to come down here, I'm going to do another merge visible. So I forgot to do this one, and we're going to high pass that one. There's our high pass. Not quite so many pixels though. We'll go 10 on that one. And blending mode, overlay for this one. And that should, let's take a look. Yeah, now that's honestly too sharp, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to leave it. That's interesting. That it's like flicking on and off like that. I'm wondering why it's doing that. I know, oh well. Empty mask layer to cover it up. Select that brush tool one last time. And just brush over the areas that I want to sharpen. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Hit the eyes, tip of her nose, woo. The lips.
Sounds like the software's still a little buggy.
Yeah, it probably is a little bit. And we're going to call that a done job for the purposes of this demonstration. Now, I would do this with way more precision and make this look way more better than I did here, right? So this was a quick run through of like my regular retouch process to show you guys what you can do just on an iPad with Affinity Photo. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this image by going back out to here, and you have the image here, and I can save it. And when I do that, you can see it's saving it as that AF photo into the app on the iPad. So it's on the local storage of the app. Now if I go back into it and I go under this menu next to the arrow, the document menu, I can do a save a copy. And here I can save this, and when it does this, it allows me to save it somewhere else. So if I saved it, say, in the Dropbox or iCloud Drive, wherever you might go. Now the other thing you can do is, where's the export?
Export it back into Lightroom.
There it is right there. Export, and this is where you can choose to save it as a PSD file. So you have PSD, preserve accuracy. You have all of these options. I left all of this as default. You can see it's generating the export. So I'm just waiting for it to do that. And you can see it's also a big chunky file, 243.99 megabytes. I'm going to do share, and I'm going to copy it to Dropbox. And it's going to ask me where I want to save it. I just have an inbox folder that I'm going to dump it into. All right, so once this goes to Dropbox, I can then go to Lightroom on the iPad here and import it, and it will show up in Lightroom CC on my computer, which is pretty awesome when you think about that. So the icon is right here. It's still uploading. It's going to take a few minutes, I'm sure. So in the meantime, do you guys have any questions about any of this or about this software? I'm still learning the software, obviously, but you can see that there's a lot of capability here. While that's working, I'll actually come back and show you one of the other things that I thought was pretty cool, which was, whoops, that's already done. That's another way. If you just hit OK, it also gives you the option to save it into one of your cloud drives rather than going through the share menu. But this one here, like I said, I made the selection of Aaron. So this is the image, and let me turn on all these other layers. And the image that I started with was the same one that I showed you guys before. I was messing around and doing some other stuff, but like this is the base level image. And I was like, okay, let me see like what kind of a selection process do we have on here? How easy it is to work and to make a selection? And it did a pretty good job. So you have to actually change, they call them personas here, which is weird. But it's like on Lightroom Classic, you have your modules. But up on the top, there's that Affinity icon. This one right here is highlighted in purple. And that's the mode that I'm currently in, the develop persona. And then next to it is a little lasso that signifies the selection persona. And your toolbar changes over on the left-hand side. And you have some selection tools here, including this selection brush that allows you to just paint on the image and have it select. And you can see, bam, it just jumped all the way over here to the corner, to the edges of Aaron, and did a pretty, rough but decent job of making a selection there. So through this process, you can get a rough-in selection, and then once you've got your rough-in selection, you can go into this refine mode right here. And it's similar to the select and mask or the refine edges of Photoshop. So where did my selection go? It went away. No, it's right there. So why? Yeah, that was the refine selection tool. But I can't see the overlay that I was so obviously there seems to be some bugs in here, like you said, because not everything is working precisely the way it's supposed to. But what you're supposed to see here is what you typically see in Photoshop, that red mask, and then you can refine that mask, which refines your selection.
Right.
So this isn't perfect. Nothing's perfect. But that day I was using it, it worked great, and I was able to see everything. Go figure, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
Let's look at Dropbox. It's almost done uploading that. So it's not quite there yet. But the result I was able to get, it might be that I'm on a bad layer. Let's try that again. Let's go back to that layer. Now let's try to refine this selection. Not a bad layer, but there we go. There's our mask. I was on a layer that didn't have anything in it, which is why it wasn't showing anything. Now, the refine tools I thought were pretty cool because, like, look at this edge up here, right? Now, in my opinion, this is actually better than what Photoshop has because down at the bottom here, you see where it says your adjustment, you have matte, and then you have the option to go foreground and background, okay, and feather as well. So matte is basically just how the refine edge or the refine brush tool works in Photoshop Select and Mask, where like this edge here is poorly selected, right? So in Photoshop, I would just be like, okay, I'm going to, you know, paint over this edge and say, take a look at this again and try to make that selection better, Photoshop. And it will do something. And like right there, that worked pretty darn good all by itself, which is great. But here's the deal, right? Like there's going to be spots where, whoops, no, I put one finger on there and I screwed up. There's going to be spots like maybe the hair, right? Where you would do something like that, where you say, okay, fix that and make that a better selection. And it'll probably, it did a really good job there too.
Yeah,
I can't find a spot now where it's going to do where I want it. Here, I know where it'll do it. It'll probably do it over here because this area is darker. Please do a bad job. Come on. When you want it to do a bad job, it won't. Let's try it on the edge of her arm here, because that's just to give you an idea of what it does. So, okay, here's what I'm talking about. Do you see how there's kind of like some transparency to the selection, kind of moving in on the edge of her arm there, right? Like this is actually her arm, but if you look at that selection, it's not solid red, which means that would be like partially transparent and it wouldn't look right in like put on a different layer. But now I can say, okay, this actually is foreground right here, and I can just paint in this area. My brush was too big for that, and say this is actually foreground. Make that all foreground selection solidly, and it will refine it and say I did a bad job again, but you can designate, okay, I'm going to paint this area as background, remove this, or I'm going to paint this as foreground, keep this, and make that even better than just saying, see if you can figure out what, you know, this area a little bit better with no direction software. And I liked that. I thought that was a pretty nice evolution of being able to refine a selection edge. Okay, this document is so close to being done.
That might as well be done.
It's almost there. It's still grayed out, so it's not quite. So let's hope that within the next minute or two it jumps up so I can bring it back into Lightroom and everybody can see that. See, Nick says, seems cool. I can see people like getting lost in this for all hours on end, for sure. I think it's a lot of fun. Okay, it's done. Now that it's done, I'm going to open Lightroom CC, and I'm going to come all the way back to here, and I'm going to hit all the way back to here. And down here in the corner, I'm going to hit plus to add a file. Now, you have camera roll up here. I'm trying to click on my computer. Oh, that's where it's going to... tap to open swipes. Okay, now how did I do this before? No one knows, my wife says.
Or is she standing right behind you or something? Because I heard her.
Yeah. No, she peeked through the the curtains. Okay, I did this already once. Tap to open, swipe, or select. It's from the camera roll. Recently added live photos, burst, time lapse, hidden slow-mo, selfies. Nope, not there. Okay, we might have to do this the other way around, actually. Go to Photoshop and say here, I want to open this elsewhere. So we're going to export.
Gerald's comment was sort of the same thing I was thinking. He says, holy crap, she sounded like some freaky disembodied voice.
Yeah, that's about par for my wife's course. I did all of this, and I had this all figured out, and now, of course, when we do it live, it's not...
Of course.
Not going the way I expected it.
It wouldn't be a live stream if it worked right.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So maybe it's the open in option here. No, that's not it. How did I do this before? I just saved it to iCloud. I don't know if that'll make any difference or not.
I wouldn't think so, because if you got a file, I'd think you'd be able to open it.
You would think so. Well, shucks.
Did you do it on the
I
the
did
iPad
it on
before?
the iPad before. I imported it back into Lightroom CC.
You sure the thing that's in Dropbox is the
It's the PSD
Photoshop?
file.
It is a PSD file.
Yeah. Now I'm befuddled. Look at me not knowing what I'm doing. Because you're supposed to be able to, yeah. Select all, deselect, blah, blah, blah. Photos, RAWs, camera roll, recently added. These are all the albums. Where did the import from cloud go on this? Okay, we're doing the thing where we ask Google, because clearly I'm struggling with this. Lightroom CC iPad import from Dropbox. No, that can't be right. I know I did this before.
George is off. Night, George.
All right, good night. We're probably going to have to wrap this up. But I had this working. And I don't know what happened to how you do this.
It broke.
Yeah, it broke. At any rate, yeah, we'll just wrap this up. I'll have to figure this out later. I plan on making some videos about this too, but I wanted to go over this tonight and just kind of share this experience with you guys so you can see if it's something that might work for you. I'd certainly encourage exploring using your mobile devices and using Lightroom CC Sync to do these kinds of things, because it can be very powerful and free you up to edit in a lot of different ways. So on that note, Mark, is there anything you want to add here? Computer says no. No?
Yeah. No, definitely nothing from me, because as you know, I've never really been using the mobile option much. So
yeah. All right. Well, then on that note, thank you everybody for joining us. We certainly appreciate it as usual. Watch out for my next video on Tuesday, and we will be back next Thursday, of course, with another live show. If you have something you'd like us to talk about, hit up me or Mark.
Yep.
Facebook, YouTube, emails, whatever, you know where to find us. Otherwise, make sure you do the most important thing, which is get out there and take some damn photos. And we will see you guys next week.
Yep. Night, everyone.
Good night.